Hey guys, I want to talk a little bit today about some female nature stuff, and these are just a few things that I would have wanted to share with my 15-year-old self, let's say. So I'm probably more talking to a younger generation of guys that might be listening to this out there, but this is, I think, kind of one of those disclaimers and forewarnings that every man should hear and understand at some point, hopefully earlier in their lives, because I think a lot of us go through a lot of our adult existence, let's say, as males, like playing the dating game, going out there and seeking romance and having experiences and encounters and really quite getting yourself hurt a lot of the times and really badly. And it takes you like years sometimes for this to really sink in. And it just, I think this is like a message of forewarning, or like I said, a disclaimer. If you are going to play this love game, like we're all going to, you all of course want to do that most likely. But it's like things like this, I wish that somebody would have told me much earlier on in my life as a young man. And that is just this, that the sad reality, or I don't even want to say sad, but it is the reality, and it is what it is. Female nature is what it is. It's the way that God, Mother Nature, whatever you want to say, designed women to be like this. I'm not knocking them. I'm not blaming them. This isn't like a shame women and how dare they kind of thing. This is just like a disclosure, like I said, of the way they are. And that is the fact that most women, not all, but most every woman, and I would actually venture to say that all women at some points in time in their lives will behave this way, but women are cutthroat in their romantic endeavors. They are cutthroat in their dating operations, let's say. And what that means is that they don't care about your feelings, guys, right? Like they care about their feelings. They care about the way that relationships make them feel. And they oftentimes will act free of what would seem to be like regard for your feelings. And what that means is that women will leave you in the drop of a hat. Women will hurt your feelings by doing the actions they do in the name of advancing their own interests. And like I said, that's not, I'm not saying that's I'm nobody to judge what's right, wrong, whatever in the name of love. I mean, it's of course it gets very, very convoluted, and everybody has their priorities and everybody does what they do. But I think most of us men are wired to operate with a sense of integrity. At least I hope you are. I hope you have some inclination deep down inside of you. You kind of know right from wrong. So when it comes to the way that we behave as men, I think a lot of us are trying to act in regard to how things make your woman feel and how your actions, even if it is like you're going to leave them or you're going to do any number of things in the course of your relationship. I like to think that most of us act with that sort of intuition on our minds about how's this going to make the other person feel. And I'm just speaking from experience and coming to know what I've learned about just in all the 25 years of dating, let's say, that yes, I've seen this time and time again. Women will most of the time do what's in their own best interest. They'll do what makes them feel the best. So if that's leaving you at the drop of a hat and going out and dating somebody the next week, a lot of things that will occur to you in your life and your dating experiences will seem to be very cutthroat, and they are. It is like this very cold, like things are all peachy keen and hunky-dory when things are good with your woman, but in the snap of a finger and the drop of a hat, that can all change. And that's the forewarning that I want to issue to you guys. That's what I want you to go through life as you're out there dating, and just keep this in the back of your mind, that it's like, just, you have to know if you're going to play this game that is always an option. That's sadly the way that most of these situations go down, I've found. And it's something that you need to harden yourself a little bit towards, let's say, and guard yourself a little bit, guard your heart. Of course, like we all want to put our hearts out there. We all want to experience emotions and love and have these joyous experiences in our lives, but with that comes along the risk that you might get hurt and hurt really bad. But I feel if you have this understanding early on, you almost come to expect it from women. And when these situations go down the way they do, i.e., somebody leaves you out of nowhere or does something very hurtful, in the regard of a romantic engagement that you might have with them, it's oftentimes hard for us guys to make heads or tails of that. We don't really understand that because we operate completely different a lot of the times, I feel like. And like I said, it doesn't make sense when women do this. But if somebody like me is here telling you that, hey, this is a possibility and this is very likely something that's going to happen to you at some point in time, I think you can approach this game with a little bit different mindset. You can like I said, you almost come to expect it. You're not surprised when things go down the way they do. And I want you to, the last thing that I want to say to you guys is, think about when you go out there and put your heart into the game, you play the love game, you go out there, you try to date, do all this stuff. I want you to equate it in a way to the way that, let's say when you go out to do like an extreme sport, for example, let's say you go down to your local rock climbing gym, you want to go out for a session, and you want to go climb up these high faces and, do this sort of, a little bit more risky of a sport, let's say. Well, what's the first thing that they make you do before you get to go do anything? Before you strap on your harnesses, before you go scampering up that wall, what do? They make you sign a waiver, okay? On that waiver, it tells you, hey, like, we're not liable, you're going to have some fun. This is very, probably a rare thing that might happen, but you might get really hurt here. You might die. You might break a leg. You might do any number of things. So it's like their way of saying, like, hey, if you're going to play the sport, you just have to have the understanding that some of these things might happen to you, and some of these things are going to seem really bad, and they might be very bad. And that's the exact same approach that you guys need to take when you're out there dating women, is that some of you, actually probably all of you, you're going to get very, very hurt at some point in time, and it's not going to make a lot of sense to you. And a lot of us go through life like with this inclination and this notion or this curiosity, let's say, about, like, well, why didn't I know this? Why didn't anybody tell me this stuff before? That's probably most of us men, but now in the information age where you can trade ideas and hopefully guys like you have a lot more exposure. Actually, certainly you do in this present day and age, as opposed to my generation when I grew up. It was all just sort of tribal knowledge. If you were lucky enough to have an older brother, or if you were lucky enough to have a father that tried to educate you on these things, or if you were lucky enough to have friends that were able to clue you into some of this knowledge earlier on in your lives, that was a very lucky thing. You were ahead of the game. But if you were somebody like me, quite honestly and admittedly, it took me years of just messing things up and getting hurt for finally this stuff to sink in after a very long period of time. And of course, if I had a son, or if I had male lineage that was coming down in my progression here of my existence on the earth here, of course I would want to share these things with them. And that's, like I said, a lot of the charge of what I'm doing here, guys. I'm talking to a younger class of gentlemen out there. I'm just trying to educate you and to just give you this forewarning to just be aware and just to understand the way that female nature operates most of the time. Yes, this is not every single woman. There are a lot of decent women out there that do have a regard for males' feelings and that do operate slightly different from the way that most females act. But I'm just telling you, in my experience, the most of them do not do that. The most of them act what would seem to be free of integrity, or would seem to be with a complete lack of regard for your feelings. And that sadly, I think that's a truth, okay? Women, for the most part, in their romantic wheelings and dealings, they're cutthroat and they do what makes them feel the best in their relationship. And if that's leaving you and seeking out those things they need somewhere else, they're going to do that. And that's just their nature. That's survival. That's the way they're wired. It just is what it is, okay? All right, guys. Hope that makes sense to you. I hope you're having a wonderful day. Talk to you more soon.